I detected a note of warning in your opening remarks when we referred to certain countries using Africa as a battlefield for proxy disputes. And of course, I don't know that you are alluding to the United States and China, but most assuredly, our former ambassador, John Bolton, wrote a national security strategy for Africa that very clearly identified the African continent primarily as a theater for the economic competition with China. And in fact, he referred to much of the Chinese infrastructure lending that has powered African growth as a debt trap. What is your strategy for negotiating the competition between the US and China? Is it possible for African nations to have two best friends, in your view?
Indeed so. I see no threat in that, because first and foremost, we recognize that the United States and China are also in the process of negotiating, with each other, right? And I think what everybody is really looking out for is everybody wants a great deal for themselves, right? And I believe that if we are able to actually look at it from that perspective, there is room enough, for all of us. We are very concerned about going back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and that era of Cold War where, you had to choose which side you want to be on. We don't want to be forced to choose. We want to work with everybody, and we believe that there is opportunity for everybody. There are those areas indeed where, America stands out and has much better strengths in certain fields. Yeah. On the other hand, you have the Chinese who build hospitals in 7 days. Yeah? So we believe that there are strengths that can come out, on either side, and I don't think it's right nor just to take us back to that period of tension. If you also look at, unfortunately, what's happening even in other countries where, and it's not just the US and China, you have other countries, unfortunately, also playing out their own proxy wars, and in some cases with very disastrous effects. Somalia, as an example. A lot of the problems that are occurring in Somalia are a direct result of proxy wars. In Somalia, look at Yemen, look at... these are the things that we're saying that we need to be able to say, look, this world, and that's going to be part of my message tomorrow at prayer breakfast and this afternoon, this world is big enough for all of us. We just need to sit down and find out that how do we establish win-win partnerships. I think that's what President Trump is trying to look for people in the Americas. They're saying that we are happy to deal and to trade with the world, but we want, to get the best possible deal for Kenya, be it with China, be it with Canada, be it with Mexico. So Kenya too is saying that we want the best deal that we can have for our citizens, be it with whoever we're dealing with, and that's why I will neither confirm nor deny your rumors. And what we are saying as Kenya, right, is that some are more ready than others to begin this process. And I don't believe that this process should be looked at as a process of Kenya breaking away, but rather Kenya taking a first step and trying to navigate through that process of deepening engagements outside of the African continent, that ultimately tomorrow can become learning steps and make the process easier for others of the African continent. So it's not that we're breaking away. We're saying Kenya wants to be a pace setter, right? If you remember last year when we broke the 2-hour marathon, yeah? Kipchoge succeeded, right? Because he had pace setters, right? So all we're saying is that Kenya wants to be a pace setter, right? And just set the ball rolling and set the path so that, you know, others will go again. So I am completely not on that page of that we are breaking it. We are definitely not breaking away. Kenya has no intention whatsoever being one of the first countries on the African continent not only to sign but to ratify the African Africa Free Trade Agreement. So 40% of our own trade as a country is with our region. So we recognize the importance of maintaining regional integration and regional trade. But we're saying that, you know, others should also say that if Kenya is actually ready, yeah, and others may not be as ready, yeah, let us be the pace setters, let us set the path, yeah, and others can, you know.
Your administration has rightly invested very heavily in infrastructure, public housing, health, your big four priorities. And as a consequence, there's pressure on the budget, and I think some concerns that Kenya too may be subject to a little bit less growth than investors would like to see. Do you mind sharing your vision for maintaining growth over the next few years?
Thank you. I think the first point to note is that for us to be able to successfully succeed, and I just want to go back to the statement that I made earlier, we must accept that we have to first and foremost design a social contract with our people that best fits our particular circumstance, and to acknowledge that standard democracy in a time of growing nationalism and ethnic tensions, we need to be able to look at that from a different angle. And that's why we're saying, for example, democracy first past the post in Kenya has proved to be not only not unsuccessful but unsustainable. And that is why we're trying to engage each other to see how we can come up with a social contract that always allows for inclusivity, so that there are no groups or regions that feel left out. That social political stability is fundamental for us to grow a sustainable development path, or a sustainable economic path with sustainable and progressive growth. And if you look at some of the crises that you're seeing emerging in different parts of the country, is that we looked at their economies, but once the political factors kicked in, they're struggling. We in Kenya want to flip that over. We want to say that yes, we are interested in economic development, economic growth, but we, more importantly, want to fix the social political contract, because that is the foundation that presents future stability. So our key focus, number one, is that. And that's why we're also saying we want to now begin engaging the world on that basis. That is why we're saying there was a time, especially when our countries were being founded, where the American principle and love for freedom and democracy saw you grant a lot of support to those of us who were struggling and fighting against colonialism and for our independence. And thereafter, very strong support for our economic agenda. A lot of the companies that first set foot in independent Africa were largely American companies that saw themselves, coming through. We want to again renew that contract and to recognize that, yes, if we want sustainable economies, we need to be able to do so not just depending on the public sector, which puts strains and stresses on our budgets and so forth, but to re-engage once again with the private sector. And that is why I'm saying there is huge scope for great returns, right? Especially here in America, as populations age, right? You want better returns for your pensions. You want better returns, and there can be no better place for that investment than in Africa. And that investment also then in turn helps us achieve the key pillars that we want to achieve for our people: housing, job security, food security, right? And health for a younger, growing population that also serves as a humongous market opportunity for American goods and services. That is your new growth horizon. So we're here, first and foremost, to strengthen that partnership between our two governments, as you have said, that has been elevated to a higher level, but with a clear understanding that for us to be able to achieve our economic agenda, maintain the growth rates that we want to deepen our partnership with private sector by granting them opportunities for them to be able to come in, help us achieve the key priorities that we need, but also give great and ample return for the investments that they themselves are making.
So I'm about to turn over to the audience, but you did mention the hospital that was built in 7 days. And in addition to the world being large enough for all of us, it's also painfully small.
Absolutely.
The Financial Times had a story today on White House concerns about the coronavirus in Africa, and in particular the fact that Ethiopia Airways is still flying its direct flights in and out of several cities of China. Can you tell us briefly, because it is such a matter of economic concern to Kenya, 63% of your GDP comes from services, the bulk of that from tourism. So coronavirus is a present threat that's probably greater than Al-Shabaab.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us about what preparations you're making?
Well, for starters, we have made it clear that we have to do everything that we can to protect both our citizens and the fact that Kenya itself is a regional hub. So by protecting our citizens, by extension, we're also saying that, we also want to ensure that that virus also doesn't spread within the region and etc. So we have put in place measures, and we've made it clear that we have stopped our flights into Chinese cities. We're not saying that this is for or against anybody. There's no politics here. We don't have the capacity to build hospitals in 7 days. Right? So we must do everything that we can within the limited resources to ensure that we keep this virus completely away. So we have put in place measures where we are screening all passengers coming into the country who have any potential of having either come direct, which is no longer possible, but even if it is via transit coming in from that region. We are working, because we've also got a number of students, to see how we can support them and find how they can also, and when they do come, and if they insist they are coming, ensuring that they are put in quarantine for the required 14-day period to ensure that they are also not going to spread that virus around. And like I said, we have weaker, and I think Dr. Tedros made it very clear when he said that the biggest worry here is not about China being unable to manage the virus, but it's about that virus coming into areas that have weaker health systems. So we must therefore do and take much more stringent measures to ensure that we don't allow that virus to come through, and we do hope that even our brothers and sisters in Ethiopia will also realize the same and come to terms with that fact, because it has nothing to do with our relationship with any country. It is about protecting our citizens. It is about protecting people from the risk of infection.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, for being here today. It's very, very nice to see you again. I was very interested in your remarks just now about BBI, the Building Bridges Initiative. I think for many of us, it appears as a bold effort, really, to bridge some of these deep, historic, partisan divides. And it's pretty easy to see how this connects with your development and economic goals. But you also spoke of inclusivity and outreach, and made it clear there's also a political dimension to this. And I wonder if you could share with us your thinking about what are your political goals in this? What would you like to see as a good political outcome for the BBI initiative?
I think what I can say is a good political outcome is a scenario. You know Kenya well. There was a tremendous fight in the late 80s, which ended up in 1992, changed the Section 2A to allow multipartyism. And what I have been telling people since then, you can take a look at any election, the election of 92, where our former president, formed a government which is actually a minority government if you take in terms of popular vote, because he had about, 30% of the total vote. Come to 97, right? Again, I think it was even slightly lower, but it was just that the opposition itself was split, yeah? In fact, the only time in the history of our multi-party era where the combined joint opposition came together was to defeat me in 2002, right? Where you can say that they won with about 65 to almost 70% majority. Because then you come back to 2010, again it was 50-50. 2013, 50-50. 2017, 50-50. So it's basically not sustainable, and that's why there is always room for people to dispute elections. So therefore, what we're saying is that the model of first past the post then, is not effectively working for us as Kenya. We have to look for a different model that allows much greater inclusion, so that it's not winner take it all. I don't want to at this stage frame and say this is what I want to see, because the minute Kenyan politics, the minute this is what the president wants, then you'll find another person will say, now I want this, and so all we're saying is we want a process that will be accepted by the majority as being a process that is not only fair, transparent, but also inclusive, right? And I believe that with the way we're going, we will come up with a formula that allows us to achieve that. All I'm saying is I don't want to say that I own the formula, this is what I want, because then everybody will say, oh, you see, he's pushing his own agenda. We will come together and like I'm saying, have a process that is fair, that is transparent, but that is also inclusive. Right? I think those are the three. We've always talked about fair and transparent. Now we have added that third category, which is inclusive, right? And I think that's what we need to focus ourselves on, and we are focusing ourselves on.